A single glass of wine changed her life forever, because the man she spilled it on wasn't just rich, he was ruthless. When a setup goes wrong at a high-profile gala, a struggling waitress finds herself owing a billionaire more money than she could ever repay. Instead of firing her, he makes her an offer that traps her in his world and under his control. Hello, fam. Welcome to True Love Stories, where we share interesting and intriguing stories. Please do well to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Do not forget to like and share with your loved ones. Now let's dive into the story. The ballroom didn't just shine, it announced wealth. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks from the ceiling, scattering light across polished marble floors so spotless they reflected every heel, every movement, every ounce of status in the room. Soft jazz floated through the air, played live by a band tucked into the corner, their smooth notes blending with the low hum of expensive conversations and quiet laughter that never quite reached genuine joy. Zariah Cole stood near the service entrance, adjusting the cuff of her uniform for what felt like the 100th time. Okay, she whispered under her breath, pressing her lips together. Just get through the night. Her reflection in the nearby mirrored panel stared back at her. Neat hair pulled into a low bun, minimal makeup, calm expression carefully constructed over a storm of nerves. She didn't belong here. Not really. Not among women draped in silk gowns that probably cost more than her yearly rent, or men in tailored suits that fit like they'd been sculpted onto their bodies. But she needed to be here. Her phone buzzed faintly in her apron pocket earlier that evening. Her landlord's message still burned in her mind. End of the week, Zariah. No extensions. And just beneath that, a text from her little brother asking if she could help pay for a school trip. So no, she couldn't afford mistakes tonight. Z, you good? Another waitress, Tasha, nudged her lightly with an elbow. Zariah nodded quickly. Yeah, I'm good. Just, rich people make me nervous. Tasha snorted. They're just people with better credit scores. Zariah let out a small laugh despite herself. That's not comforting. Just don't drop anything, don't argue, and don't look too impressed, Tasha added, grabbing a tray. They can smell desperation. Great, Zariah muttered. No pressure. A supervisor clapped sharply. All right, everyone in position. Guests are settling in. Zariah picked up a silver tray, carefully arranging the glasses of red wine, so they sat evenly. Her hands were steady, thankfully, but her mind kept running through worst-case scenarios. Don't trip. Don't spill. Don't breathe too hard. She stepped out into the ballroom. The noise hit her first, not loud but layered. Conversations about investments, mergers, vacations in places she couldn't pronounce. Laughter that sounded practiced. Compliments that didn't quite reach the eyes. She moved carefully between guests, offering drinks with a polite smile. Wine, she asked a couple standing near a tall floral arrangement. The woman barely glanced at her before taking a glass. The man didn't acknowledge her at all. Zariah moved on. Champagne, sir? A man took a glass without breaking eye contact with the person he was speaking to, as if she were invisible. She swallowed that feeling down. It's just a job. Keep moving. Across the room, a sudden shift in energy made her pause. It was subtle at first, like a ripple. Then it grew. Heads turned. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Even the band seemed to soften slightly, as if instinctively acknowledging something or someone. The doors at the far end of the ballroom opened. A tall man stepped inside, his presence cutting through the room like a blade. Malcolm Pierce. Zariah had never seen him in person before, but she knew instantly who he was. Everyone did. He didn't smile as he entered. Didn't wave. Didn't try to charm the room. He didn't need to. Confidence rolled off him in quiet, controlled waves. His cream-colored suit was flawless, sharp lines, perfect tailoring, the kind of fabric that didn't wrinkle because it simply refused to. His expression was calm, almost detached, but his eyes missed nothing. Yo, that's him, Tasha whispered from somewhere behind Zariah. Zariah didn't turn, but her grip tightened slightly on the tray. That's Malcolm Pierce, Tasha continued, her voice lower now. Man bought his first company at 23. Sold it for millions. Then turned around and made billions. People say he'll shut down a deal just because he doesn't like how you breathe. Zariah raised an eyebrow slightly. That sounds excessive. That sounds accurate. Tasha shot back. Across the room, a few bold guests approached Malcolm immediately, smiles wide, hands extended. Mr. Pierce, it's an honor. Malcolm, great to see you. He acknowledged them with brief nods, a handshake here, a few words there. Polite but distant. Controlled. Others stayed back, watching. Measuring. Zariah exhaled slowly. Okay, just another guest. Don't stare. She adjusted the tray and started moving again, weaving through the crowd. But even without looking directly at him, she could feel where he was. The room seemed to orbit around him, conversations bending in his direction, attention pulled like gravity. Focus, she whispered to herself. A guest reached for a glass, nearly knocking the tray off balance. Zariah steadied it quickly, offering a tight smile. Careful, the woman said, as if Zariah had been the problem. Of course, Zariah replied, her voice smooth despite the irritation bubbling underneath. She moved past her, exhaling quietly. Almost halfway through the night. You're doing fine. Across the room, Malcolm shifted slightly, freeing himself from a conversation that clearly bored him. His gaze swept the ballroom, not lazily but deliberately. Observing. Calculating. For a brief second, his eyes passed over Zariah. She didn't notice. But if she had, she might have seen the faintest flicker of curiosity before his attention moved on. Near the bar, a woman in a silver gown stood watching the room with sharp, assessing eyes. Her posture was perfect, her smile practiced, but there was something colder underneath. Her gaze landed on Zariah, and stayed there. Zariah, unaware, adjusted her grip on the tray again, and turned toward the center of the room. Wine, she offered to a small group, her voice steady, her movements careful. One glass gone. Then another. She shifted her weight slightly, preparing to move toward the next cluster of guests. Across the room, Malcolm had just stepped away from another conversation, finally alone for a moment. And somehow, without realizing it, Zariah started walking in his direction. The tray balanced perfectly in her hands. Her steps measured. Her focus locked on doing her job right. The distance between them closed, inch by inch. Behind her, the woman in the silver dress took a slow step forward, her expression unreadable. The music played on. The lights shimmered. And the night, still calm on the surface, was seconds away from unraveling. The distance between Zariah and Malcolm closed slowly, almost deliberately, like the night itself was holding its breath. Zariah adjusted her grip on the tray, her fingers steady despite the quiet tension building in her chest. She wasn't even looking at him directly, just aiming for the cluster of guests nearby. That was the trick. Don't focus on the powerful ones. Treat everyone the same. Wine, she offered smoothly to a couple standing just a few steps away from Malcolm. One glass lifted. Then another. So far, so good. Behind her, heels clicked softly against marble. The woman in the silver gown moved closer, her eyes fixed on Zariah with a sharpness that didn't match her elegant smile. Up close, her beauty was striking, but there was something calculated in the way she watched, like she wasn't just observing, she was waiting. Her friend leaned in slightly. You're being obvious. I don't like her, the woman replied under her breath. You don't even know her. I don't need to. Her gaze flicked briefly toward Malcolm, who now stood alone, scrolling through something on his phone, his expression unreadable. Then back to Zariah. Still calm. Still focused. Still unbothered. That seemed to irritate her more. Watch this, she murmured. Zariah took a small step forward, shifting the tray to balance the remaining glasses. She could feel it now, that strange shift in the air again. Like something was about to happen, but she couldn't place what. Relax, she whispered to herself. You're fine. And then, a body brushed past hers. Too close. Too sudden. The contact was light enough to look accidental, but deliberate enough to ruin everything. Zariah's balance faltered. Just slightly. But slightly was all it took. The tray tilted. One glass wobbled, its base lifting off the silver surface. Zoraya's eyes widened. No! Her fingers moved instinctively, trying to correct it, but momentum had already taken over. The glass slipped, and in what felt like cruel, stretched-out slow motion, it tipped, spun, and emptied its deep red contents directly onto Malcolm Pierce's pristine cream suit. A dark stain bloomed across his chest like ink on silk. The music didn't stop, but the room did. Conversations cut off mid-word. Laughter died instantly. Even the air seemed to stiffen, thick with shock. Zoraya froze. Her heart dropped so fast it felt like it hit the floor. "Oh my God," she gasped, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I am so sorry." The tray shook slightly in her hands as she quickly set it down on the nearest table, grabbing napkins with trembling fingers. I'm sorry, I didn't mean." She stepped toward him, panic rising, her mind already racing through consequences. "You're fired. Immediately. Probably blacklisted. Definitely never working an event like this again." She reached out with the napkin, and his hand caught her wrist mid-motion. Firm. Unyielding. The contact wasn't rough, but it was absolute. Like a command, not a reaction. "Don't." His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Zoraya's breath hitched as she looked up. Up close, Malcolm Pierce was even more intimidating. His jaw was tight, his expression controlled to the point of being almost cold. But his eyes burned. Not with chaos. With precision. Anger carefully contained. "You have any idea what you just did?" he asked, his gaze locked onto hers. For a split second, fear tried to take over. Her pulse raced. Her throat tightened. But something in her refused to collapse. "I said I'm sorry," she replied, her voice unsteady, but not weak. A flicker crossed his expression. Not softness, surprise. He hadn't expected that. His grip tightened just slightly. Not enough to hurt, but enough to remind her he was in control of the moment. "Sorry," he repeated, almost thoughtfully. "Is that supposed to fix this?" She swallowed, forcing herself to hold his gaze. "It was an accident. Accidents have costs." Her eyes dropped briefly to his suit, the stain now spreading faintly across the expensive fabric. "I can see that." Around them, the silence had grown heavier. People were watching now, but pretending not to. Side glances. Subtle shifts. The kind of attention that came with knowing something important was happening. No one stepped in. No one intervened. Because this was Malcolm Pierce. And no one wanted to be on the wrong side of whatever came next. Zoraya exhaled slowly, steadying herself. "I'll pay for it," she said. That changed something. Malcolm's eyes narrowed slightly, studying her more closely now. Not just as a problem, but as a person. "You'll pay for it," he repeated. "Yes." There was a pause. Then, he laughed. Not loudly, not warmly, but genuinely amused. The sound sent a ripple through the nearby crowd. "You don't even know how much it costs." Zoraya lifted her chin slightly, even as her stomach twisted. "Then tell me." Another pause. Longer this time. He released her wrist slowly, his hand dropping back to his side, as if the moment of control had passed. But the tension hadn't. "All right," he said. His tone shifted, still calm, but now edged with something sharper. "Interest. Deal." The word landed heavier than it should have. Zoraya blinked. "Deal. You said you'd pay," he continued. "So you will." Something about the way he said it made her chest tighten. Not because of what he said, but because of how certain he sounded. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a sleek business card and holding it out to her. "Come to my office tomorrow." Zoraya hesitated for half a second before taking it. The card felt heavier than paper should. "And we'll discuss your payment." Her fingers curled around it instinctively. "Okay," she said, before she could overthink it. Malcolm gave a small, almost satisfied nod. Then, just like that, he turned away. The moment was over. Just like that. The room slowly came back to life. Conversations restarting, music filling the space again, tension dissolving into whispers. Did you see that? She's done for. That suit alone. Zariah stood there for a second, still holding the card, her heart pounding against her ribs. Behind her, the woman in the silver dress watched quietly, a faint smile playing at her lips. Satisfied, Zariah didn't see her. She was too busy staring down at the name on the card in her hand. Malcolm Pierce. Her stomach sank. What did I just agree to? She whispered. And for the first time that night, she realized the mistake wasn't just spilling the wine. It was saying yes. Zariah didn't sleep. Not really. She lay on her bed staring at the ceiling, Malcolm Pierce's business card resting on her chest like it had weight, real, physical weight. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again. The wine spilling, his expression shifting, his hand gripping her wrist, that quiet, controlled anger. Then his voice. You'll pay for it. She groaned and rolled onto her side, grabbing her phone. 3:17 a.m. Fantastic, she muttered. Love that for me. Her apartment was small but clean. Barely enough space for the essentials, but it was hers. A chipped coffee table, a second-hand couch, and a fridge that made a suspicious noise every time it turned on. This was her reality. Not marble floors. Not $20,000 suits. She sat up, dragging her hands down her face. Okay, think, she said out loud. Worst case, he exaggerates the price. I apologize again. Maybe we negotiate. Payment plan? Even as she said it, she didn't believe it. There was something about Malcolm that didn't feel negotiable. Her phone buzzed. A text from her little brother. You coming by later? I gotta show you something. Zariah smiled despite everything. Yeah, after work. She stared at the message for a second, then looked back at the business card sitting on her nightstand now. After work. Or after I go ruin my life, she added under her breath. The next morning came too fast. Zariah stood across the street from Pierce Industries, staring up at the building like it personally offended her. It wasn't just tall. It was intimidating. Glass and steel stretched into the sky, reflecting sunlight so sharply it almost hurt to look at. People in tailored suits moved in and out of the entrance like they belonged there, like they were part of something bigger. She looked down at herself. Simple blouse. Black pants. Clean, neat, but not this. All right, she said quietly. You said you'd take responsibility. So take it. She crossed the street. Each step felt heavier than the last. Inside, the air changed instantly. Cool, quiet, controlled. The lobby alone was bigger than her entire apartment. Polished floors, sleek furniture, and a front desk that looked like it belonged in a museum. A woman behind the desk glanced up. Yes. Zariah cleared her throat. I'm here to see Malcolm Pierce. The woman's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened. Do you have an appointment? Zariah hesitated for half a second, then held up the card. He told me to come. The receptionist glanced at it, then back at Zariah. One moment. She typed something quickly, then nodded. Take the elevator to the top floor. Someone will meet you. Top floor. Of course it was. Zariah forced a polite smile. Thank you. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have. The higher it went, the tighter her chest felt. You can do this. Just talk. Just listen. Don't panic. The doors opened to a quiet, expansive floor that somehow felt even more expensive than the lobby. Before she could take a full step out, Ms. Cole. Zariah turned. A sharply dressed man stood a few feet away, tablet in hand. Mr. Pierce is expecting you, he said. This way. She followed him down a long hallway lined with glass offices and minimalist decor. Everything looked precise. Intentional. Like nothing existed there without a reason. They stopped at a set of double doors. The man knocked once. Come in, Malcolm's voice came from inside. The assistant opened the door and stepped aside. Zariah took a breath, then walked in. Malcolm Pierce didn't stand. He sat behind a wide desk, scrolling through something on a tablet, looking completely unbothered, like he hadn't turned her life upside down less than 12 hours ago. Close the door, he said. She did. The soft click echoed louder than it should have. For a moment, he didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her, just worked. Zariah crossed her arms slightly. You gonna pretend I'm not here or? I like punctuality, he interrupted, still not looking up. You're 2 minutes early. She blinked. That's a problem? Now he looked at her. No, he said simply. It's rare. She shifted her weight. Can we just get to it? One corner of his mouth twitched slightly, like he almost smiled, but didn't. He set the tablet down and reached for a document on his desk. This, he said, sliding it toward her, is the cost of the suit. Zariah stepped forward and picked it up. Her eyes scanned the number, then scanned it again, then a third time like maybe it would magically shrink. It didn't. Her stomach dropped. This has to be a joke. No joke. She let out a short, disbelieving laugh. That's more than I make in. She stopped herself, pressing her lips together. You know what? Never mind. I do know, he said calmly. That irritated her instantly. Oh, I'm sure you do, she shot back. You probably spend this on lunch. I don't eat lunch. That's not the point. He leaned back slightly, watching her now, not dismissively, but with clear attention. You said you'd pay for it. I did, she said, her voice tightening. I just didn't realize I'd have to sell a kidney to do it. You wouldn't get enough for it. She stared at him. You're not funny. I'm not trying to be. Silence stretched between them. Zariah looked back down at the paper, her mind racing. There's no way. There's just no way. She lowered it slowly. I can't pay this. I know. Her eyes snapped back up to his. You knew that last night. Yes. Something in her chest flared. Then why? Why make me come all the way here just to tell me something we both already knew? Because, he said, folding his hands on the desk, I wanted to see if you'd still show up. That caught her off guard. What? Most people wouldn't, he continued. They'd disappear. Avoid responsibility. Make excuses. I'm not most people. I've noticed. Another pause. Then, so what now? She asked more quietly. Malcolm studied her for a moment. Not her clothes. Not her situation. Her. Then he spoke. You'll work for me. Zariah blinked. I'm sorry, what? As my assistant, he clarified. Until the debt is paid. She stared at him, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. You're serious. Very. That's not. She stopped, shaking her head. That's not normal. Neither is a $20,000 mistake. Her jaw tightened. That was an accident. And this is a solution. She let out a breath, pacing once before turning back to him. That's basically what forced labor. You agreed to pay, he said evenly. This is how. You're unbelievable. And you're out of options. The words landed hard. Because they were true. She hated that. Zariah went quiet. Her mind ran through every possible alternative. And came up empty. Rent. Bills. Her brother. Reality didn't care about pride. What does this job even involve? She asked finally. Scheduling. Errands. Managing my time. Whatever I need. She raised an eyebrow. So everything. Within reason. Your definition of reasonable worries me. That's fair. Despite herself, she almost smiled. Almost. Then she sighed long and slow. Fine. The word tasted bitter. Malcolm didn't react immediately. Then slowly he nodded. Good. She crossed her arms again. When do I start? He glanced at his watch. You already have. Zariah stared at him. You're joking. He picked up his tablet again. Get me coffee. Black. She didn't move. Right now? She asked. He looked up at her, completely serious. Yes. A beat passed. Then another. Zariah exhaled sharply, turning toward the door. Unbelievable, she muttered. As she reached for the handle, his voice stopped her. Zariah. She glanced back. For what it's worth, he said, his tone quieter now. I don't make offers like this lightly. She studied him for a second. Yeah, she said. That doesn't make me feel better. Then she walked out. And just like that, her debt had turned into something else entirely. Not just an obligation, but the beginning of something neither of them fully understood yet. By the time Zariah came back with Malcolm's coffee, She had already decided two things. 1, she didn't like him. 2, she was absolutely not going to let him see how overwhelmed she felt. She walked into his office, placed the cup gently on his desk, and crossed her arms. "Your overpriced bean juice," she said. Malcolm glanced at the cup, then up at her. "You took 6 minutes." Her eyes narrowed. "You timed me? I time everything." "Well, maybe next time you can time yourself making it." "I don't make coffee." Clearly. A pause. Then, just for a second, his mouth almost curved again. Almost. Zariah caught it. "Oh, so you do have emotions," she said. "Good to know. They're selective." I can tell." He picked up the coffee, took a sip, then set it down. "It's acceptable." "Wow," she deadpanned. "High praise. I'm honored." Malcolm ignored that and picked up his tablet again. "Sit." She blinked. "Excuse me? If you're going to work for me, you need to understand how I operate." Zariah hesitated, then pulled out the chair across from his desk and sat, reluctantly. Malcolm tapped a few things on his tablet, then turned it toward her. "My schedule." Zariah leaned forward slightly. Her eyes widened. "You cannot be serious." Every hour, every minute, was accounted for. Meetings stacked on meetings, calls layered between them, travel blocks, review sessions, even something labeled strategic thinking time like it was an actual appointment. "You don't breathe?" she asked. "I breathe efficiently." "That's not a thing." "It is for me." She shook her head, scrolling slightly. "And now," he continued, "it's your job to make sure none of this falls apart." She looked up at him. "You've had assistants before." "Yes." "And they all quit?" "Yes." "That's not concerning to you?" "No." Zariah leaned back in her chair. "Let me guess, you overwork them, underthank them, and expect perfection." "I expect competence." "That's corporate for perfection," she shot back. Malcolm studied her for a moment. "You talk a lot. You listen too little." Another pause. This one lingered just a bit longer. Then he stood. "Come with me." Zariah frowned but got up anyway. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." "That's not an answer." "It's enough of one." She rolled her eyes but followed him out of the office. The office floor moved differently when Malcolm walked through it. People straightened. Conversations ended. Eyes followed. Zariah noticed immediately. "Do they always look like that?" she whispered. "Like what?" "Like you might fire them just for blinking wrong." "If they're blinking wrong, that's a problem." She stared at him. "You cannot be serious." "I rarely joke." "I'm starting to see why nobody sticks around." They stepped into a conference room where a group of sharply dressed professionals were already seated mid-discussion. The moment Malcolm entered, everyone stood. "Mr. Pierce." He gave a small nod. "Sit." They sat instantly. Zariah lingered near the door, unsure where she fit in all of this. Malcolm didn't introduce her. Didn't explain her presence. He just started speaking. "Update me." A man at the far end began presenting numbers, projections, something about market expansion. The words were sharp, fast, precise. Zariah tried to follow, but it was like stepping into a moving train. Malcolm interrupted halfway through. "No," he said. The room went still. "Those projections are wrong." The man blinked. "Aye, sir, we double-checked." "You checked incorrectly." His tone wasn't loud, but it cut. Zariah glanced around. Nobody challenged him. Nobody even tried. Malcolm stood there calm, controlled, dismantling arguments like it was second nature. And suddenly, she understood. It wasn't just that people respected him. They feared being wrong in front of him. The meeting ended quickly after that. People filed out, quieter than they entered. Zariah stayed where she was. "You do that on purpose," she said once they were alone. "Do what?" "Intimidate people." "I expect accuracy." "You expect perfection," she corrected. He didn't respond, which was basically confirmation. She crossed her arms. "You know that makes people worse, right?" That got his attention. They're afraid to mess up, so they overthink, and then they mess up anyway. He looked at her, expression unreadable. "That's your analysis?" "That's basic human behavior." A pause. Then, Noted, he said. Zariah blinked. Wait, that's it. What were you expecting? I don't know. A speech? A threat? A lecture about how you're always right. I don't need to lecture. I am right. She let out a short laugh. You're unbelievable. And yet you're still here. That shut her up for half a second. Unfortunately, she muttered. The rest of the day didn't get easier. If anything, it got worse. Reschedule my 2 p.m. You already have something at 2 p.m. Then move that. It's with your investors. Then move something else. Like what? That's your job to figure out. Zariah stared at his calendar like it personally offended her. This is chaos. This is structure. This is insane. He didn't look up. You'll adjust. Oh, I will adjust, she said. Right out the door. You won't. She paused. You sound very sure. I am. She hated that he was right. Again. Later, as she sorted through emails that never seemed to end, she muttered under her breath. If I survive this, I deserve a medal. You're talking to yourself, Malcolm said from across the room. I'm coping. Try coping faster. You're behind. She looked up sharply. I have been here for hours. And I'm human. That's not an excuse. She pushed her chair back slightly. You know what? Say thank you. Just once. He glanced at her. For what? For me being here. For not quitting. For dealing with all of this. A beat. I didn't ask you to stay. Her jaw tightened. You literally did. I offered you a solution. That benefits you. It benefits both of us. She let out a breath, shaking her head. You are exhausting. And you're still here. There it was again. That same line. That same certainty. Zariah sank back into her chair, rubbing her temples. I really need this money, she muttered. Malcolm heard her. Of course he did. But this time, he didn't respond. He just watched her for a moment, something quieter passing through his expression before it disappeared just as quickly. Finish the emails, he said finally. Her head dropped back. Yes, Your Highness. By the time the sun started setting, the office had emptied out. The noise faded. The pressure eased just slightly. Zariah stood near the window, looking out over the city. This view is insane, she admitted. Malcolm, still at his desk, didn't look up. You get used to it. I don't think I would. Silence settled between them. Not tense this time. Just quiet. She turned slightly, glancing at him. You really don't stop, do you? No. Why? He didn't answer immediately. Then, because stopping costs more. She frowned slightly. That sounds sad. It's efficient. She shook her head softly. Everything with you is about efficiency. And everything with you is about emotion. That's because I'm not a robot. A pause. Then, I noticed, he said. Zariah blinked. There it was again. That small shift. Not cold. Not sharp. Just something else. She looked away quickly. Yeah, well, she said, clearing her throat. Get used to it. I'm not changing. Good, Malcolm replied. Her head turned back slightly. Good. Yes. He met her eyes briefly. I don't need another version of me. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Zariah looked away again, trying to ignore the strange feeling that settled in her chest. You're still a terrible boss, she said. Noted. But this time, there was the faintest hint of amusement in his voice. And somehow, that made it worse. By day 3, Zariah had come to a very firm conclusion. Malcolm Pierce was not just a difficult man. He was a full-time problem. Coffee. Black. Zariah didn't even look up from the laptop. You just had coffee. I require another. You require water, she shot back. What you're asking for is a bad life decision. A pause. Then calmly, Zariah. She sighed, already standing up. Yeah. Your caffeine addiction outranks my logic. I get it. As she walked out, she added under her breath. One day I'm going to switch this with decaf and watch your personality collapse. I heard that. Good, she called back. Reflect on it. Somewhere between coffee run number 4 and rearranging his already over-organized calendar, Zariah realized something else. Malcolm didn't just give tasks. He layered them. Cancel my 11:30. You moved your 11:30 to 2:15 yesterday. Then cancel 2:15. That's with your legal team. Reschedule. They're in another state. Then call them. I am calling them. Right after I finish the 3 other things you just gave me. You're prioritizing incorrectly. She turned slowly in her chair. Say that again. No. I heard you, she said, standing up. I just want to make sure you heard yourself. He leaned back slightly, completely unbothered. This is part of the job. No, this is part of you being chaotic with confidence. I'm not chaotic. You absolutely are. I'm structured. You're structured on paper. In reality, you're just aggressively unpredictable. A beat. Then, that's not inaccurate, he admitted. Zariah blinked. Wait. He picked up his tablet again like he hadn't just said something borderline reasonable. Next task. She squinted at him. I don't trust how easily you said that. By midday, Zariah had learned something important. Malcolm Pierce didn't say thank you. Not once. Not for the coffee. Not for fixing his scheduling mess. Not even for stopping him from walking into a meeting 10 minutes late, because he'd completely ignored his own calendar. You were about to miss that, she pointed out as he came back into the office. I wouldn't have missed it. You were literally walking in the opposite direction. I would have corrected. With what? A time machine? He didn't respond. Instead, he sat down, already moving on. Zariah stood there, arms crossed. You're welcome. Silence. She tilted her head. Wow. Nothing. He glanced up. For what? Her mouth fell open slightly. For doing my job well. You're doing what you're supposed to do. That still deserves acknowledgement. It deserves continued employment. She stared at him. You know what? One day, I'm just not going to do something. And when it falls apart, I'll be like, oh wow, guess appreciation matters. It won't fall apart. You sound very confident for someone who needed me to remind him what day it is this morning. I knew what day it was. You said it was Thursday. It felt like Thursday. It's Monday. A pause. That's not my fault. She threw her hands up. You are impossible. Later that afternoon, things got worse. Pick up my dry cleaning. Zariah looked up slowly. You have people for that. I had people for that. And now you have me? Yes. She leaned back in her chair, narrowing her eyes. You're enjoying this. Enjoying what? Making me do random errands. It's part of the role. No, it's part of you being petty. I'm not petty. You made me get coffee 4 times. You made comments all 4 times. That's because you deserved them. He almost smiled again. She caught it this time. Oh no, she said, pointing at him. Don't do that. Do what? That almost smile thing. It's suspicious. I don't know what you're talking about. You do. And I don't trust it. Noted. She shook her head, grabbing her bag. I'm going to get your dry cleaning. If I don't come back, assume I ran away and started a new life. You'll be back. She paused at the door. You really believe that? Yes. She held his gaze for a second, then huffed. I hate that you're right. The city air hit differently outside, louder, warmer, real. Zariah walked down the street, shaking her head. Dry cleaning, she muttered. I went from spilling wine to being a billionaire's errand girl. Amazing. She picked up the order, balancing the hangers carefully as she walked back. But despite herself, her mind drifted. Back to him. The way he worked without stopping. The way he noticed everything. The way he listened, quietly, even when he pretended not to. Ugh, she groaned. Why am I thinking about him? Because underneath all that control, there was something else. She just hadn't figured out what yet. When she got back, Malcolm was exactly where she left him. Of course he was. You're late, he said without looking up. I was gone 20 minutes. You took 22. She set the dry cleaning down a little harder than necessary. Here, your ridiculously expensive clothes. He glanced at them briefly. Then at her. Thank you. Zariah froze. Wait. He raised an eyebrow slightly. You just said. Yes. She blinked. Say it again. No. Her eyes narrowed. You do know how to say it. I choose when to use it. That's manipulative. That's efficient. She shook her head, but there was a small smile fighting its way onto her face. Unbelievable. As the day stretched into evening, the office slowly emptied again. Zariah sat at her desk, finishing up the last of the emails, her shoulders aching. I'm tired, she muttered. You'll adjust. She didn't even look up this time. If you say that one more time, I'm adjusting my resignation letter. You won't quit. You keep saying that like you know me. I do. That made her pause. Slowly, she looked up at him. No, you don't. Malcolm met her gaze, calm as ever. You're still here. A beat. Then another. Zariah leaned back in her chair, studying him. Or maybe, she said slowly, I just don't like losing. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Good, he said. She tilted her head slightly. Good. Yes. He held her gaze just a second longer than usual. I don't either. The room went quiet. Not awkward. Not tense. Just still. Zariah looked away first, clearing her throat. Yeah, well, she said, standing up and grabbing her bag. Try not to fall apart without me tomorrow. I won't. She walked toward the door, then paused. Eat something, she added without turning around. A small pause behind her. Then, noted. She didn't see it. But for the first time that day, Malcolm didn't go back to work immediately. He just sat there for a moment, thinking. And somewhere buried under routine, control, and habit, something had started to shift. By the second week, Zariah had stopped counting how many times she wanted to quit. Not because things got easier, but because quitting started to feel unnecessary, which irritated her more than anything. You're staring again, Malcolm said without looking up. I'm analyzing, Zariah corrected from across the desk. Unsolicited analysis is still staring. She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. You've had the same email open for 10 minutes. I'm thinking. You've been thinking since 8 a.m. It's now 6:30 p.m. Exactly my point, she said. That's not thinking. That's overthinking with confidence. He finally looked up at her. You're still here. She raised an eyebrow. That's your favorite line, huh? It's accurate. She glanced around the office. It was quiet now. The rest of the staff had gone home hours ago. The city lights outside the floor-to-ceiling windows had taken over, glowing against the darkening sky. Do you ever go home? She asked. Malcolm didn't hesitate. This is home. Zariah made a face. That's sad. It's efficient. There you go again, she said, sitting up. Everything is efficient with you. It works. Does it? A pause. He didn't answer immediately. Zariah tilted her head slightly, watching him. You've got all this. She gestured around the office. Money, power, a building with your name on it, and you're still here at night arguing with emails. I'm not arguing. You're definitely arguing. I'm correcting. She laughed softly. See? That right there. That's exactly what I mean. He studied her for a moment. You don't operate like this. No, she said simply. Because I like peace. Peace is unproductive. Peace is necessary. That's subjective. That's human. The word hung there. Human. Malcolm leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable. Zariah softened just a little. You don't trust people, do you? She asked. That one landed. Not loudly, but directly. His gaze shifted, just barely, but she caught it. Trust is inefficient, he said. She nodded slowly, like she expected that answer. Or, she countered, you've just been burned before. Silence. Real silence this time. No quick response. No sharp comeback. Zariah watched him carefully. Who is it? She asked, quieter now. His jaw tightened slightly. That's not your concern. Maybe not, she said. But it explains a lot. I don't need explaining. Everybody does. He stood abruptly, walking toward the window. Conversation over. Or at least, that's what he intended. Zariah didn't follow right away. She gave him a second, watching his back, the way his shoulders held tension even when he was still. Then she stood and walked over anyway. Look, she said, leaning lightly against the glass a few feet away. I'm not trying to pry. Yet you are. I'm trying to understand why you act like the world is a competition you can't lose. He didn't turn around. Because it is. That's exhausting. It's necessary. No, she said gently. It's lonely. That made him turn. Finally, his eyes met hers, sharper now, but not angry. Just exposed in a way he didn't like. I don't need people, he said. Zoraya shrugged. Cool. Then why do you notice everything I do? A beat. That caught him. You notice when I'm late, when I'm early, when I'm annoyed, when I haven't eaten, she continued. You notice everything. That's not someone who doesn't need people. That's observation. That's attention. It's my job to be aware. Not like that. She held his gaze. And definitely not with me. The room felt smaller suddenly. Or maybe just quieter. Malcolm stepped closer. Not aggressively, not forcefully, just enough to close some of the distance. You assume a lot, he said. I read people, she replied. It's a survival skill. And what do you think you've read about me? She didn't answer immediately. Didn't rush it. I think, she said slowly, you're used to people wanting something from you. He didn't react. But he didn't interrupt either. And I think, she continued, you don't know what to do with someone who doesn't. A long pause followed. The kind that stretched just enough to feel significant. Malcolm's gaze didn't leave hers. And you don't want anything? He asked. Zoraya gave a small, almost amused smile. Oh, I want things, she said. Just not from you. That shifted something. Subtle, but real. For the first time since she met him, Malcolm didn't feel like the one in control of the conversation. He exhaled slowly, stepping back just a little. You should go home, he said. Zoraya blinked. That's it. Yes. That's your grand exit from a deep conversation? I have work. She stared at him. You are unbelievable. And you're still here. She groaned. There it is again. Despite himself. He almost smiled. This time it stayed a second longer. Zoraya caught it. And this time, she didn't call it out. Instead, she grabbed her bag. Eat something, she said again, heading toward the door. Zoraya. She paused, glancing back. A brief silence. Then, you're wrong. She tilted her head. About what? I know exactly what to do with people. She studied him for a second, then smiled slightly. Yeah, she said. That's what you think. And with that, she walked out. Malcolm stood there long after she left. The office felt different now. Quieter than usual. Not empty. Just missing something. He glanced at the spot where she'd been standing. Then at the door. Then back at his work. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't focused. Her words lingered. That's not someone who doesn't need people. He exhaled slowly, running a hand across his jaw. I don't need people, he muttered. But it didn't sound as certain this time. And somewhere beneath the routine, the control, the structure, a crack had formed. Small, barely noticeable, but enough. Because for the first time, someone had seen through Malcolm Pierce. And didn't flinch. By the third week, something had changed. Zoraya noticed it first. Not in a big, dramatic way. Malcolm Pierce didn't suddenly become warm or easy to deal with. He still worked like sleep was optional, still gave orders like they were facts, and still had the emotional range of a very disciplined wall. But there were differences. Small ones. Subtle ones. Dangerous ones. Did you eat? He asked one morning without looking up. Zoraya froze mid-step. Excuse me? He kept scrolling through his tablet. You heard me. She narrowed her eyes. Who are you, and what have you done with the emotionally unavailable billionaire? I asked a question. And I'm concerned, she said, walking closer to his desk. You don't ask questions like that. I ask relevant questions. How is my breakfast relevant to your billion-dollar empire? You're less efficient when you don't eat. She stared at him. That's your angle? Yes. A pause. Then she smirked slightly. You care. I optimize. You care with a business excuse. I don't. You do. I don't. She leaned forward slightly, resting her hands on his desk. Say it again. I don't. Louder. No. She grinned. Yeah, that's what I thought. It didn't stop there. Why were you late? He asked later that afternoon. Zariah dropped her bag onto her chair. I was 5 minutes late. You're never late. Wow, she said dryly. Didn't know I had a reputation to maintain. You do. She paused. Something about the way he said it. Not annoyed. Not critical. Just certain. I had to drop my brother off, she said more quietly. Bus didn't show. Malcolm nodded once. That's fine. Zariah blinked. That's it. Yes. No lecture? No efficiency speech? You had a valid reason. She crossed her arms, studying him. You're evolving. I'm adapting. Same thing. Not quite. She shook her head, but there was a small smile on her face she didn't bother hiding. The real shift, though, came in the little moments. The ones that didn't need to happen. The ones that weren't part of the job. Like when she skipped lunch without realizing it. Eat, Malcolm said, sliding a takeout container onto her desk. Zariah looked at it. Then at him. What is this? Food. I can see that. Why is it here? You didn't take a break. I was busy. So eat. She leaned back slowly. You bought me lunch. It's a business expense. She opened the container, raising an eyebrow. This is not business food. This is good food. It's efficient. She laughed. You really hide behind that word, don't you? I use accurate language. She took a bite, paused, then pointed at him with her fork. Okay, this is actually really good. I know. You've had this before. Yes. So you got yourself food and accidentally got me some too? No. She squinted. You did this on purpose. I did. A beat. Zariah sat back, looking at him differently now. Wow. What? You're trying. I'm not. You are. I'm being practical. She smiled softly. Hum. Malcolm noticed things too. More than he intended to. The way she talked to herself when she was stressed. You cannot schedule 5 meetings in 1 hour. That's not time, that's chaos, she muttered one afternoon. I can hear you, he said. Good, she replied. Reflect on it. The way she refused to be intimidated. Move my 3 p.m. No. He looked up slowly. No. You need that meeting. I can reschedule. You've rescheduled it 3 times already. That's because you're avoiding it. Silence. Malcolm's eyes narrowed slightly. Zariah didn't flinch. I don't avoid things, he said. You do when they annoy you. They're inefficient. They're necessary. A pause. Then, leave it, he said. Zariah nodded once, turning back to her screen. Already did. And the way she stayed. That was the part he didn't fully understand. She didn't bend. Didn't adjust herself to fit him. Didn't soften her opinions or hold back her thoughts. Anyone else would have. Everyone else had. But not Zariah. One evening, the office was quiet again. It was becoming a pattern. Late hours. City lights. Just the two of them. Zariah sat on the edge of his desk, scrolling through her phone. You know, she said, for someone with unlimited money, you have very limited hobbies. I don't need hobbies. You need something. I have work. That's not a personality. It's enough. She shook her head. No, it's not. He glanced at her. Why does that matter to you? She shrugged. It doesn't. A pause. Then, it just seems like a waste. His expression shifted slightly. Of what? She looked at him. All this, she said, gesturing vaguely. And you don't even enjoy it. I enjoy results. That's not the same thing. Silence settled between them. Not tense. Just thoughtful. Zariah hopped off the desk, grabbing her bag. Well, she said, try not to schedule yourself into an early grave. I won't. She walked toward the door. Then paused. You know, she added, glancing back, you're not as terrible as you were when I met you. Malcolm raised an eyebrow. That sounds like progress. It is, she said. Don't ruin it. I won't. She studied him for a second, then smiled slightly. Good night, Malcolm. That was new. Not Mr. Pierce. Not sarcasm. Just his name. He noticed. Good night, Zariah. She left. The office felt quieter than usual after that. Malcolm sat at his desk, staring at his tablet without really seeing it. Her voice lingered. Her presence lingered. Everything about her lingered. He leaned back slightly, exhaling. This wasn't efficient. None of it was. The distractions. The conversations. The way his attention shifted when she walked into a room. It didn't fit into his system. It didn't make sense. And yet, he didn't stop it, didn't correct it, didn't end it. Instead, he found himself asking questions he didn't usually ask. Not about business. Not about numbers. About her. Why she stayed. Why she pushed back. Why she didn't treat him like everyone else did. And more importantly, why he didn't want her to. Malcolm looked toward the door she had just walked through. Then back at his desk. Then quietly, almost like he was testing the truth of it. You're still here, he muttered to himself. But this time, it wasn't about her. It was about what she was turning him into. And for the first time in a long time, Malcolm Pierce wasn't entirely in control of it. The invitation sat on Malcolm's desk like it meant something. Zariah picked it up, scanning it with a slight frown. Another gala? Yes. You people really love dressing up and pretending to like each other. It's networking. It's fake, she corrected. Malcolm didn't argue. Instead, he watched her. You're coming with me. Zariah looked up immediately. No, that wasn't a question. It should have been, she said, dropping the card back onto his desk. I already survived one of those. Barely. This one is different. They're all the same. Fancy room, fake smiles, overpriced food, and somebody judging my shoes. No one will be judging your shoes. They always judge the shoes. They won't. She crossed her arms. You're very confident for someone who doesn't wear heels. A pause. Then, consider it work, he said. Her eyes narrowed. You're using my debt against me. I'm using your role. That's the same thing. It's not. It is. Silence stretched. Then Zariah sighed dramatically. Fine. But if someone spills wine this time, I'm leaving immediately. That's acceptable. She pointed at him. And if it's on you again, I'm pretending I don't know you. That wouldn't be new. She smirked slightly. Wow. Growth. You made a joke. I didn't. You did. It was just very dry and emotionally unavailable. The night of the gala came faster than she expected. Zariah stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the deep emerald dress she had reluctantly agreed to wear. Okay, she muttered, turning slightly. Not bad. It hugged just enough, flowed just right. Simple but elegant. Still not her world, but she looked like she belonged in it. Her phone buzzed. I'm outside. Malcolm. She grabbed her clutch. All right, she said to herself. Round 2. Let's not ruin anyone's life tonight. The venue was just as extravagant as the first one, if not more. Lights shimmered. Music flowed. Wealth moved like it had its own rhythm. But this time, Zariah didn't feel small. She walked beside Malcolm, her posture steady, her expression calm. People noticed. Of course they did. They always noticed Malcolm. But tonight, they noticed who he brought with him. Mr. Pierce, someone greeted. He nodded. This is Zariah, he added briefly. Zariah glanced at him. That was new. He didn't introduce people. He acknowledged assets. Not people. Nice to meet you, she said politely. They moved through the room, stopping here and there. Zariah played her role, but not perfectly. She didn't fake laugh. Didn't oversmile. Didn't shrink. And Malcolm noticed. Again. Always. Then. It happened. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But enough. Zariah stopped walking. Her body stiffened slightly. Malcolm noticed immediately. What is it? He asked quietly. Zariah's gaze was fixed across the room. Her. Malcolm followed her line of sight. Silver dress. Same sharp eyes. Same calculated posture. The woman froze for just a second when she recognized Zariah, then quickly recovered. You're sure? Malcolm asked. I'll never forget her, Zariah said, her voice calm, but tight underneath. Something in Malcolm shifted instantly. Cold. Precise. Controlled. Stay here, he said. Zariah grabbed his arm lightly. Malcolm, I'll handle it. There was no anger in his voice, which made it worse. He walked toward the woman without hesitation. People moved without realizing they were moving, subtly clearing a path. Power didn't announce itself. It rearranged the room. Enjoying the evening? Malcolm asked as he approached her. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course. It's a beautiful event. Good. A pause. Then, you should leave. Her smile faltered. Excuse me? I don't tolerate people who create problems in my space. Her expression tightened slightly. I'm not sure what you're implying. I don't imply, he said calmly. I state. A few nearby guests grew quiet, sensing the shift. You pushed her, Malcolm continued. At the last event. A beat. Then she laughed lightly. That's a serious accusation. It's an accurate one. Her eyes flickered, just briefly. That was enough. You're choosing to believe a waitress over me? She asked. Malcolm didn't hesitate. Yes. The word landed clean. Sharp. Final. Zariah, watching from a distance, felt something twist in her chest. Not shock. Not exactly. Something deeper. You don't want to make this public, Malcolm added, his tone still even. So I'll give you a choice. Silence tightened around them. You can leave quietly, he said, or I can make sure everyone here knows exactly why you're being asked to. Her jaw clenched. The room wasn't fully watching, but enough people were. Enough power was listening. And she knew it. This wasn't a battle she could win. This isn't over, she said under her breath. It is tonight. A long pause. Then, she turned and walked away. Just like that. No scene. No argument. Just defeat, dressed in elegance. Zariah exhaled slowly. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. Malcolm returned to her side like nothing had happened. It's handled, he said. She looked at him. Really looked at him. You didn't have to do that. Yes, he said simply. I did. A pause. Zariah shook her head slightly. You believed me. Yes. No questions. No doubt. No. She studied him, something softer settling in her expression. Why? Malcolm held her gaze. And for once, he didn't deflect. Because you don't lie about things that matter. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. No edge. No calculation. Just truth. Zariah looked away briefly, collecting herself. Thank you, she said quietly. He nodded once. You're welcome. They stood there for a moment, the noise of the gala fading into the background. Something had shifted again. Not small this time. Not subtle. Clear. Defined. Real. Zariah glanced back at him. You know, she said, a hint of her usual tone returning. This is the part where the ruthless billionaire softens. I'm not soft. You kicked her out for me. I removed a problem. She smiled slightly. Sure you did. A pause. Then, come on, he said. Where? Food. Her eyes lit up slightly. Now that, she said, is a language I understand. And as they walked away from the crowd, closer than before, easier than before, neither of them said it, but they both felt it. This wasn't just a job anymore. And whatever it was becoming, it wasn't something either of them could control. The silence between them on the ride back wasn't awkward. That was the problem. Zariah sat angled slightly toward the window, watching the city lights blur past, her reflection faintly staring back at her. Normally, she would have filled the space, made a comment, cracked a joke, said something. But tonight felt different. He believed her. No hesitation. No questions. Just yes. She glanced over at Malcolm. He was looking straight ahead, calm as ever, one hand resting against his chin like he was thinking about something far more complicated than a gala. But she knew better now. You're quiet, she said finally. So are you. That's because I'm thinking. So am I. She turned slightly in her seat. That's dangerous. Why? Because when you think too long, you start making decisions that affect people's lives. A small pause. That's accurate, he admitted. She smiled faintly. Yeah, I know. Silence slipped back in, but softer this time. Not empty. Just full of things neither of them were saying. The next morning felt strange. Too normal. Zoraya walked into the office, dropping her bag onto her chair like she always did. Good morning, she called out. Good morning, Malcolm replied. She paused. Okay, that was normal. What were you expecting? I don't know, she said, sitting down. A dramatic personality shift. Maybe as Zoraya, I've realized the meaning of life speech. I haven't. Disappointing. A beat. Then, did you sleep? He asked. Zoraya blinked. You're doing it again. Doing what? Caring. I asked a question. You ask a lot of those now. That's efficient. She pointed at him. You're hiding behind that word again. I'm using it correctly. She shook her head, smiling despite herself. Whatever helps you sleep at night. I slept fine. Good, she muttered. Because I didn't. That got his attention. Why? She hesitated, then shrugged. Just thinking. About. She met his eyes. You. That landed. Not loudly, but directly. Malcolm didn't speak immediately. Didn't look away either. Zoraya exhaled softly, leaning back in her chair. Relax, she added quickly. Not in a weird way. That's unclear. I mean, she stopped, shaking her head. You know what? Forget it. No, he said. Finish the sentence. She studied him for a second, then sighed. I'm just trying to figure out what this is. What is? She gestured between them. This. You. Me. The job that's not really just a job anymore. A pause. Malcolm leaned back slightly. It's an arrangement. Zoraya stared at him. You really said that with a straight face. It's accurate. No, it's safe, she corrected. That's your default. I prefer clarity. You prefer control. Another pause. This one heavier. Zoraya leaned forward slightly. You don't get to control everything, Malcolm. I control what matters. And what if this matters? The question hung there. Unavoidable. For once. Malcolm didn't have an immediate answer. Days passed. But something had shifted permanently. They still worked. Still argued. Still circled each other like neither one wanted to be the first to cross the line. But the line was already gone. Move your meeting, Malcolm said. No. He looked up. No. You need it. I can reschedule. You won't. A pause. Then. Fine, he said. Zoraya blinked. Wait. He didn't argue. Didn't push. Didn't override her. She leaned back slowly. Who are you? I'm adapting. She smiled slightly. Yeah, you are. It happened on a quiet evening. Of course it did. The office was empty again, the city glowing outside like it always did. Zoraya stood near the window, arms loosely crossed. My debt's almost paid, she said. Malcolm, at his desk, didn't look up immediately. I know. Silence. Zoraya turned. So that's it. Yes. She nodded slowly. You're free to go. The words were simple. Clean. Final. But they didn't feel like it. Zoraya didn't move. Didn't grab her bag. Didn't walk away. Malcolm noticed. Of course he did. Do you want to leave? He asked. She hesitated. That alone was enough to change everything. I don't know, she admitted. That wasn't like her. She always knew. Always had something to say. But this was different. Malcolm stood. Slowly. Deliberately. For once, there was no rush in his movement. No urgency. Just intention. He walked toward her, stopping a few steps away. For the first time, he didn't feel in control of the moment. And he didn't try to be. I don't know how to do this, he said. Zoraya blinked. Do what? This, he said quietly. Anything that isn't structured. Predictable. She softened slightly. That's because you've never had to. I've avoided it. Same difference. A faint breath of something almost like a laugh left him. Then, what happens if you stay? He asked. She met his eyes. I don't stay as your employee. Then as what? A beat. Zoraya stepped closer. Not all the way, but enough. Something real, she said. The words settled between them. No performance. No deflection. Just truth. Malcolm looked at her like he was memorizing the moment. Every detail. Every possibility. Every risk. This wasn't efficient. This wasn't controlled. This wasn't safe. And yet, he didn't step back. Zariah, he said, quieter than she'd ever heard him. I don't do this halfway. Good, she replied softly. Neither do I. A pause. Then, something in him shifted. Not cracked. Not broke. Opened. He closed the distance. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Just certain. And when he kissed her, it wasn't careful. It wasn't calculated. It was everything he'd been holding back. Zariah exhaled softly against him, her hand gripping his jacket slightly like she needed to ground herself in something real. When they pulled back, just slightly, foreheads almost touching, she smiled. See, she whispered. Not so efficient. For the first time, Malcolm smiled fully. Not controlled. Not restrained. Real. No, he admitted. Not efficient. She tilted her head slightly. Worth it. A pause. Then, yes. No hesitation. No calculation. Just truth. Weeks later, the office felt different. Not because the work had changed, but because they had. Zariah still argued with him. Still challenged him. Still refused to bend. And Malcolm still watched her. Still noticed everything. Still asked questions he used to think didn't matter. Did you eat? He asked one afternoon. Zariah smirked without looking up. You care. I optimize. She laughed. Yeah, okay. He glanced at her, that same small smile returning. And this time, he didn't hide it, because somewhere between a spilled glass of wine and a debt that should have driven her away, Zariah Cole became the one thing Malcolm Pierce never planned for. And the one thing he never wanted to lose. Finally, we have come to the end of this story. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, do well to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.